Hi, in this video we are going to investigate what makes two lines perpendicular. Now before we do that, we need to recall that the definition of perpendicular is lines that cross at 90-degree or right angles are perpendicular. So if I were just to sketch that quickly, oftentimes you see this little box in the corner, and that little box indicates a 90-degree angle, and anytime you have a 90-degree angle, you have perpendicular lines. Okay, so before we dig into example one, let's look at some visuals of what perpendicular lines look like. We're going to use Desmos here, and you can see that I have two lines that are perpendicular. And no matter how I change the slope, they continue to be perpendicular because I have my lines set so that the slopes are opposites and reciprocals. So if we read the first box on the upper left-hand corner, it says, two lines are perpendicular if they intersect at 90-degree or right angles. In order to do this, their slopes must be opposites and reciprocals. We often say if two lines are perpendicular, then their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So recall, reciprocals are two numbers that will multiply to equal 1. So let's go back over here and think about what reciprocals are. So reciprocals are two numbers that when we multiply, they equal -1. You can also think of them as the flip of the fraction. Now, I don't like to use the word flip because I like to use accurate vocabulary, but if I have 2/3, the reciprocal would be 3/2. And when we multiply those together, we get 6/6, which equals 1. So 2/3 and 3/2 are reciprocals. You could also think of 1/5 and 5, or 5/1, those are also reciprocals. When you take 1/5 of 5, right, you get 5/5, which is equal to 1. So 1/5 and 5/1 are reciprocals because when we multiply them together, their product equals 1. Okay, let's go back to our Desmos graph. So, opposite reciprocals means that one of the numbers must be positive and the other must be negative. So numbers that are opposite reciprocals will have the product that is -1. Okay, so some examples of opposite reciprocals are 4/5 and -5/4, or 7 and -7 and 1/7, 6/5 and -5/6. So what I've done right here with my blue and my green is I've set one to have a slope of m and one to have the opposite reciprocal slope, which would be -1/m. And that's why no matter what I do to my m, those lines will always be perpendicular because I've set the slopes to be opposites and reciprocals. Okay, so when we're looking at the slope, you're always looking at that coefficient of the x. So let's go ahead and turn these off. We're going to dig into example 1 now, and we're going to look at the slope. So we need to analyze the slope of each function. So let's look at this slope and this slope. So for my first line, my slope is 4. And for my second line, my slope is -1/4. We need to decide our 4 and -1/4 opposites and reciprocals. Okay, so to do this, we look at our two numbers. One of them is positive and the other is negative, so they are opposites. Are they reciprocals? Well, 4 is the same as 4/1. And 1/4 is the reciprocal of 4/1. So they are reciprocals. Also, another thing you could do is you could multiply them. Is 4 times -1/4 equal to -1? Because remember, opposites and reciprocals must have a product that is equal to -1. When I multiply these together, I get -4 in the numerator, and I get a +4 in the denominator, which equals -1. So we have checked that the slopes are opposites and reciprocals, so we would say these lines are perpendicular. Okay, so that's how we check. We need to look at the slopes. These lines are perpendicular. So let's look at example 2. Oh, first let's look at the graph of example 1. If we look at example 1, we've got our two lines. We're going to turn them on, and we can see that they do indeed form right angles. Okay, you can also count the rise over run to find the slopes as well. So if you're given a graph, you can always count the rise over the run. Let's look at example 2. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to see if these are perpendicular lines is we look at the two slopes. And that's all we really need to do here is identify the slopes. This slope is -5/7. This slope is 7/5. One of them is negative, one of them is positive. Okay, and then if we look at the numbers, we have 5/7 for this slope and we have 7/5 for this, so they are opposites and reciprocals. So the lines are perpendicular. And remember, when you're looking at equations of lines, you really want them to be in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, because you can quickly and easily identify the slope. All right, so if we look at example 2, and we look at the lines that we've got for example 2, we can see that those lines indeed are perpendicular. Their slopes are opposite reciprocals. The lines look perpendicular. One is sloping in the positive direction, one is sloping in the negative direction. All right, let's take a look at our very last example here. We'll look at the graph after we do it numerically. Okay, in example 3, we have our two slopes. Our slope here is 1/9 and our slope here is -9. So we're going to write those down. Slope is 1/9, slope is -9. Now if you have a slope that is an integer, which is a positive or negative whole number, put it over 1. -9 is the same as -9/1. You can quickly see that this slope is positive and this slope is negative, so they are opposites. And then you can see 1/9 and 9/1 are reciprocals. So these two slopes fit the requirements for the two lines to be perpendicular, so the lines are perpendicular. And remember this upside capital T, that means perpendicular. So that's a nice abbreviation if you don't want to write out the whole word perpendicular. So we're going to look at that graph quickly just to verify. It's always nice to look at the graphs to make sure that what you've done is correct. So we have our two equations, y equals -9 minus 3 and y equals 1/9 x plus 5. And you can see that those two lines are perpendicular. They look like they cross at 90-degree angles, and their slopes are opposites and reciprocals. Okay, so in summary, if two lines are perpendicular, then their slopes are opposite reciprocals, or if two lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals, then the lines are perpendicular. I hope this video helped you understand better how to identify perpendicular lines. Thank you for watching.